Several years ago, two men, Ernest Hairston and Linwood Smith, who has since died, co-authored the book Black and Deaf in America. In the book, they discuss the kinds of problems black deaf people face. Some are like the problems white deaf people face, and some are quite different. Larry Burke for Deaf Mosaic will interview Mr. Hairston. Larry?
Thanks, Gil. I'm happy that you're here. I have some questions for you. And my first question is, how were opportunities limited for black deaf people in years past?
Many people think that there are greater opportunities for us today than before. However, remember that back in 1970, black people had many more opportunities. At that time, many colleges and universities wanted black students so that they could get grants for the courses. Many businesses wanted black professionals who were qualified, etc. That was back around 1970. Now, in the 1980s, we have the budget cuts, and many people have achieved equal opportunity. So today really isn't much better than the 1970s.
Over the last 20 years, have the conditions changed or improved? And how?
20 years ago, I was in Michigan working at a hearing and speech center. And at that time, I never thought I would be in that position, because prior to that, no black professionals were working in organizations that were predominantly white. Black professionals were working down south as teachers. Before that, when I was a college student, the only jobs I could get were limited to the ones where I would be working only with blacks. So, comparing 20 years ago with today, there are a lot more professionals working across the country.
When you first entered Gallaudet College, few black deaf students were enrolled. Now I've noticed increasing numbers of black students on campus. What are your feelings or your perspectives on the future?
Are you thinking of the black deaf students throughout the nation, or specifically of Gallaudet College?
Here at Gallaudet.
At Gallaudet College, well, during my time, the percentage of black students was higher than now. You see black students, but if you count the percentage of how many are American, the number is small, especially when you consider that there are several thousand students who make up the Gallaudet student body. Then how many do you see? There are really fewer black students now than in my time. As for the future, it really doesn't look too good because there are too few black students going to college, both hearing and deaf. It's not enough.
When you were young, what were your dreams and aspirations for a career or education?
When I was young, my first goal... You mean during college?
No, before Gallaudet.
Before entering college, I went to the West Virginia school. At that time, the schools were segregated, one school for the blacks and another for the whites, until 1954, when the Supreme Court ordered the integration of the two schools. Then I went to be integrated into the white school. I was there for only 1 year. At that time, I envisioned that I would become a barber or a tailor, because that was the best job for black deaf people. However, my supervising teacher said, "A barber? Why don't you go to college?" So I thought, why not? And I went to college.
I was wondering, while you were having your dreams, what were your fellow black deaf students hoping to do for employment?
When I was in school, most successful black deaf people only worked as barbers or tailors. Some had their own shoe shops, but very few other opportunities.
I wonder if you think that black deaf people as a whole and white deaf people as a whole are more different or alike. And my second question is, will they work on common goals together, or will they go their own separate ways?
If you look at a black deaf person and a white deaf person, and if you're speaking only about deafness, they are really just alike. They're both deaf. If there's a difference, the difference is in race only. The race makes the difference. But both black and white deaf people have the same problems with communication, language, self-esteem. The problems are identical.
What about working towards a goal? Will they be together or separate?
By together, do you mean socializing? If we're talking about socializing, remember that black and white deaf people get along with each other better than hearing people in general. Because they're both deaf, the deafness helps the bonding. Now, with regard to attitudes, black and white deaf people's attitudes towards each other compare with hearing people's attitudes toward each other. So, that's a hard question to answer.
We know that hearing people often do not understand deaf culture. I wonder about how the black hearing people and black deaf people get along.
You see, black deaf people get along with black hearing people the same as white deaf people get along with white hearing people. However, remember that deaf people have no choice. You must learn to get along with hearing people anyway. If you want to succeed, you have to work with hearing people, go to school with hearing people, and many deaf marry hearing people. Almost all deaf people have hearing children. So you have to get along with hearing people anyway.
What will it take to improve the education and job opportunities for black deaf people?
The first requirement is to educate. I mean, really educate the teachers and employers to the fact that black deaf people are individuals. They have different skills and abilities. Some have strong points and some have weak points. If teachers look at the student as a black person or a deaf person, their attitude will not help the education. The teacher must look at the individual and his strengths, then work to improve the strengths. That will improve the educational and work opportunities for black deaf people.
The book that you and Linwood Smith co-authored is very interesting. I noticed how the book commented on what appears to be a lack of role models for black deaf children. And you've cited a few examples of famous black deaf people. What are your feelings and thoughts about black deaf role models nowadays?
Today, there are many more black deaf role models, but they're scattered about, and you don't know about them. For example, Dr. Glen Anderson. He was the first black deaf man to get a Ph.D. I doubt if many black deaf students know about him. There is another well-known social worker in Wisconsin. I never knew about him until 2 years ago when I met him at a black deaf convention. There are many black deaf role models, but no one knows about them.
One last question. The young black deaf children growing up today, what do you hope the future holds for them?
I hope that young black deaf children realize the importance of having a good self-image, the importance of getting as much education as possible, because education is the key to success. Without education, it's difficult to succeed in this world.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here.